meeting for June 20th, 2023. It is 6:45 p.m. And I'd like to start by introducing those people that are here and people that we expect that are not here yet. So we have member Peter Coffin, I'm Lynn Merrill, I'm the chair. Robin Carter is our administrative assistant. Chris Bashaw is the selectman's rep, and Peter Bakey is a member. We're still waiting on Rob Tercelo, a member, and Robin Duguay, who's usually a couple minutes late because of her schedule. So they're not here yet. The first thing I'd like to do is, before we even get into explaining about the public hearing process, is to inform people that are here that the Housing Support Inc. has requested a continuance to the July 18th meeting. That was a site plan review for the total renovation of an existing structure to create 4 one-bedroom housing units, including a small addition at the rear. Also the extension of the right side driveway to accommodate 1 handicap parking space and 3 extra parking spaces at the rear. They have requested the extension because they, as I mentioned at our last meeting, they are in negotiations with the neighbors and they have not yet reached a resolution. So we'll need to have a motion to continue that hearing.
So moved.
And to a
Time
time.
July 18th, and at the town hall, time and place certain, and with any change of plans due by Thursday, a week, 10 days prior. Is that by noon? Thursday. Let me see, I can look at that. 18th is Tuesday, so on Thursday the 6th by noon.
A second.
Second?
Any further discussion?
And it was to 6:30, right? I mean 6:45.
6:45, and on the 18th, noon, on the 6th, the plans.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That would be unanimous. We already introduced you, Robin.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so tonight is our public hearing night, and we have 2 public hearings tonight. Just to inform people at home or people that are here, the process is that the applicant will present their materials and their hearing. After that, the board will get comments from the departments and our town engineer and our town planner, followed by questions from the board, public comment, and back to the board, and then we will make any decisions that need to be made after that. So our first hearing tonight is Unitil Energy Systems. They're at 24 Toll Road Realty Trust at 24 Toll Road. Map R12, lot 26. The applicant will be discussing the proposed site access design for an anticipated site plan review of the proposed solar field with associated access and stormwater management improvements. The board and members of other commissions in town went on a site walk, so we saw the site. The rain fortunately held off a bit on Saturday morning.
I think everybody made it out.
I think everybody made it up. We didn't hear of anybody getting lost.
That's why I was late, actually.
Your city is still wet.
Wow.
One of the things we really looked at on this was the access for where Toll Road might be relocated to provide a better access to bring the panels and equipment into the site. So you need to introduce yourselves, tell us where you're from, and for the record.
My name is Nick Golan. I'm a licensed engineer and principal with TF Moran.
I'm Jake Dussling. I'm a principal engineer with Unitil.
My name is James Hasselbeck. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Revision Energy, the solar contractor here. Full disclosure, I'm also a Kingston resident. I live at 19 Elkins Road, and my wife is the elected chairwoman of the Kingston Community Library.
If it helps, my mom was also a volunteer librarian. Full disclosure. But I digress.
That doesn't help.
So folks, the reason why we're here is one of the focal points of the application really was access. making sure that appropriate access could be provided to the site. When we last met with you, we conveyed that we'd be meeting the DPW director to walk the area, make sure we had a good plan for access, including the intersection with Mill Road, because it's a bit of an awkward intersection, to say the least, as far as the geometry, sight lines, etc. So you should have in your handout really a summary of these various elements that we had the opportunity to walk the site, Mr. Coombs, on Friday, May 19th, and there were really three primary items that we evaluated. The intersection of Toll and Mill Road, and as a project team, we really agreed that there is some improvements we can do there. We can do them cost effectively, and it's going to provide a benefit not only to the project but to the community. We've moved forward with a construction estimate of those improvements, and it's our understanding that we'll move forward with a full design of really creating more of an appropriate T intersection at Mill Road. The next element was really the current condition of Toll Road itself. It's not shabby, like it's in good to fair condition. There were a couple of places where we could see there was some pavement rattling that would need to be repaired. So Phil was able to say, all right, before you guys start work, I'll make sure these are in good condition. We'll do a video survey of it, and if there ends up being a problem with the road thereafter, Unitil would be responsible for at least putting it back in the condition it was previously. The third item is really the access from Toll Road itself. The Class 5 portion of Toll Road, as indicated on your handout, and about 1,000 linear feet from our driveway, and making sure that the access that we provide from that point would be appropriate. So we're looking to build a 20-foot wide gravel driveway with 1 foot of selects, and then that'll be subject to the final engineering design, but that's our expectation, is the gravel drive cross section that's provided corresponding to NHDOT 304.2 would be what we would use, which is fairly typical for a driveway. If anything, it's probably a little bit more robust than you would see for a typical driveway, but given the types of vehicles that we would have for just the initial construction, we want to make sure that it's appropriate. You'll note that there is centerline grading shown. There's a profile below the plan view, trying to match grades as close as we can. The reality is it's only a 2-rod road, so a rod 16.5 feet, so you've only got 33 feet to play with. Got to be pretty spot on. So the grading's pretty tight as far as the transitions at the right-of-way, but when we look at the overall slopes, we're probably the steepest at any one point is 85%. So in general, this is a very gentle slope. The vertical curves provided are consistent with industry and engineering practices, so we feel pretty confident about what we're proposing. We had the opportunity to meet with your select board. They went ahead and approved this, subject to final planning board approval as far as the engineering design. So our intent with this meeting tonight was to secure that approval, to know that we in fact do have a project, because without this access, this project couldn't exist. We realize this is a little bit of a partial or abbreviated submittal, but before we give you the full show, we wanted to make sure that access was appropriately addressed. We thought it would be a value one to know that we're making those improvements in Mill Road, and that Unitil really is working in cooperation here with the town to make sure what's being provided here is good for the now and the future. So I'll try and be as short and sweet as I can with this. Those are our requests, and then we'd just like to verify the timing for the resubmittal for the rest of the package in advance of your July meeting.
Thank you. So we do have one department comment. It's from the fire department. They would like year-round access to the site and a Knox box for any gate and building.
Seems reasonable.
Yep.
And access means it would be their responsibility to plow.
But they're talking about maintaining it anyway, so they
Right.
talked about plowing before. Yeah.
It's our expectation that we would plow from the end of the Class 5 road
Yeah.
up to the facility, similar to what we do for any of our substation access.
From the Class 5 road to your driveway, I apologize if I didn't hear you stating, I can't see it on the plan, was it gonna have a gate there? That driveway access?
There isn't one proposed, but if that's what the town prefers, it's something we can provide.
I'm just curious, he'd have to have a key to it, right?
No, I don't think the desire was for people seeking a gate there, they just need a gate to the entrance to their facility once they get there. Because down the road, people that have other properties that may abut that may need access to it, and I know there's cell property on that site, that there's access to that cell property as well, so I don't think people would want that gated off.
They drive down there now?
No, we,
Probably not. 'Cause, I mean,
Cell
that-
doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, that's more of a water
We walk from the
water
left
resource site, but
I guess the reason, the reason I was mentioning it is not to limit people there. I mean, right now they can't drive down there anyway,
Yeah.
but if they improve that road, is that gonna invite people to be driving down there and may cause damage to the property, or, I mean, they weren't down there before, now they build this road in there, so now you're gonna have people driving down there.
yeah, but I think what the select board approved, it's gonna be a class 6 road, or it's gonna be built to a standard that, I don't know of any other roads in town that we restrict access to like that once it's approved.
So I was just asking Glenn, I know the abutters to the parcel were noticed, but I'm wondering if there was any notice to the abutters to the construction of the road modification.
No. Oh, at the end of, that's the town land at the end of the road?
I believe we notified everyone, just to play it on the safe side.
And there were abutters present during the select board's
I'm just
meeting on that.
asking, I don't know which parcels these are, but specific to the two who would be most impacted by this new road design.
So relative to Apple Road, that intersection, so when we talked to Phil about the field was, he would be responsible for coordination with those others.
Okay.
The intent, and I didn't read it verbatim from the letter that he had provided, but Unitil would be responsible for the rebuild, and then Kingston DPW would be responsible for the discontinuance of the existing curb cut.
That last portion of Toll Road?
So toll road will remain, relative to that element, but the actual curb cut on the Mill Road would be discontinued. So they're cutting out 10, 15 feet of pavement, sodding that over, or however, just making sure that's restabilized so people know that that's no longer the access point.
That first house would be very happy.
Phil
Very happy.
Your own private driveway.
No more headlights.
Phil had said he would follow up with those folks to make sure that that was understood, because this is really almost it's almost P3, it's a joint effort
Yeah.
for us to be able to do this. But we can make sure that, we can follow up with Phil and make sure that does happen, obviously.
But Chris, you said most of them were at the selectmen's meeting
There
anyway.
were several people from Toll Road at the selectmen's meeting, and I think because this is a weird thing where that necessarily wasn't part of their site, it was a request by the town. I think the town bears the responsibility
Yeah.
of, that meeting.
Any other comments from the board? Seeing none, do we have any public comment?
So I'm way down.
Excuse me, whoop,
Got it.
you must come and, sit by the microphone. So that everything gets recorded.
You can hear me from like 5 miles away, but that's okay.
And you need to introduce yourself and tell us where you live.
All right, I am Melissa Perry. I live in Danville at 50 Fry Road, but I own the land directly behind this parcel. It's 22 acres in Kingston and 1 acre in Danville, and I don't remember my numbers. My biggest concern is, again, making sure that the access from Tower Road through to Old Fry Road and the T's and everything there don't get blocked off, because I want to be able to someday get trails out there. And figuring out if there's a wetlands impact, which is probably not this meeting.
Correct.
Because they're gonna clear cut everything to put in solar panels, and I don't wanna be flooded.
I'm
But
sorry
that's a
you
different
missed the
conversation.
sidewalk.
Yes. I've been out there many times. So as long as that's gonna be clear, and there's the potential to have access to like maybe bring in trucks to do some select cutting while you guys are working, then I'm totally fine with that. But I also know you're not improving the road anywhere near to where my land starts, because your land only drops down to like a little bit of towel, and yeah.
So here's actually a good representation. So for both Melissa as well as the board, so here's Toll Road, here's the existing Woods Road. Our access is really almost the median or the center line here of the property. Her property really begins, I had to ballpark it, probably at least another 500-600 feet beyond our driveway. So what we're providing is a minimum of 50 feet beyond our driveway, provide appropriate turning radius for oversized vehicles. But then from there, yeah, that would be unobstructed for you to continue to use.
Great. That's it. Thank you. Do we have any other public comment? Okay. Seeing none, we'll close public comment at 7 o'clock.
Let's talk about how this comes back before the board.
Yes.
They've been working with us. This is really a second design review, so they've really had 2 design reviews. The goal is to have the first public hearing on the 18th. Much to their chagrin, they're gonna have to renotice that as a full site plan review hearing. We have the time to do that. The deadline for that meeting really has already passed, but they've been working with us consistently. I don't wanna throw a deadline in their way, provided you have been able to do whatever prevented you from finishing the plan set for this meeting, and did it work out well? Are you happy?
We hope so.
Oh, you hope so. Okay.
We have the expectation.
Okay, so when could you get plans to us? Because we would have to, did we decide we'd put the notice in the paper on Thursday? This Thursday or next Thursday?
We have one more Thursday to wait if we need to. So
But it would be, we would have no, we wouldn't be nudging any days of clearance if we were able to put it in on Thursday's paper. So how quickly do you foresee getting those revised plans to us?
Just so I'm clear, so that notice would be for this Thursday versus next Thursday, or?
We would put it in the paper this Thursday. It would come out following Wednesday.
The deadline for the newspaper is this Thursday.
Because otherwise, it comes out exactly on the day that is clear. It is.
We want to give people as much advance notice.
Yeah, so I mean, we could put it in next week's paper. It'd come out on June 6th. That gives us the 12 clear days you need for the 10-day notice.
I think my answer would probably be predicated on how long does your town engineer need to review the plans. Like, these plans obviously be reviewed by Alteration of Terrain, Wetlands Bureau, New Hampshire Fish and Game, U.S. Fish and Wildlife. There's a lot of people that end up looking at it. But I know you guys do your internal review as well, and I want to make sure we give him ample opportunity and time to conduct his review. So if he wants to say, utility might need him on X day in order to fulfill my review,
And there he would be sitting if he were with us. I mean, he generally likes to have at least 10 days.
Right, usually, that's why we have the deadline of the 6th, to give us 12 days before a meeting, so that not only he gets to review them, but all the other town departments do as well.
So could you work with getting them?
Oh, that's right, he's been over them already. Well, he's been over the preliminary.
He's been over the preliminary plans.
pretty good review,
Yeah.
is what I'm saying.
Right, but he hasn't seen.
He didn't dig in.
Yeah, I mean, his review was that you were missing a lot of stuff, which presumably you will no longer be missing.
So what was it, we were talking 10 days before the July 18th meeting?
Yeah, we need them by the 6th, generally.
July 6th.
So one thing about how this comes back before the board is, so obviously they've gotten approval from the select board for, as it was proposed,
Right,
for the road
access.
conditions. The planning board at this point doesn't have the authority to give them a formal approval of those 2 conditions, but I think.
Right, not tonight.
But I just think they need to have a consensus of the board that this isn't going to be a moving goalpost, that once the whole other site comes in and then we hash out everything else, wetlands, fencing, everything else, and then somebody says, I really want to talk about the width of the road again.
I mean, even at the very first design review, we said what we would really be looking for was guidance from DPW, from the director.
And exactly, everything that's been recommended,
And it seems like Phil
to the
is
select
online
board
with
that's
this,
proven,
right.
it has all been reviewed, seen the site, and gone over with our public works director, and the select board's approval was based off of his comfort level with what was proposed.
Right.
So I don't think it would be inappropriate for the board to give a consensus that they would not be looking to revisit any of the conditions of that unless anything changed on it during the process.
Yeah, as I said at that first design review, I wasn't going anywhere near this. It's a selectmen's issue. We're talking about how a site is going to use a road that is within the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen. So if the Board of Selectmen is comfortable with their proposal, well, I would hope that the planning board is too.
Mm-hmm.
I just know how sometimes,
Oh,
like,
I know.
somebody's like, hey,
If the board would be willing to do perhaps a straw poll vote, just to confirm that, so that we've got some level of comfort, I know that would be appreciated by our team, if it's something you're comfortable with.
I have no intention of revisiting anything the select board has approved regarding the road construction and the access to Toll Road, unless something was brought before us that changes what was presented.
So why don't we just say, does anybody here have any issues with the road as proposed? Okay, I think you've got your answer.
That's all we're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, it was good to see everybody working together on this, because it's an interesting issue.
So, just to give you guys some background, we had the opportunity to have our agency review meeting, which include DES, and the other state agencies that would be processing the wetlands permit. We are in the neighborhood of about 20,000 square feet of impact, and we're actively working with your Conservation Commission to see if they have a shovel-ready project, whether it be upland buffer preservation or a restoration project or otherwise. And are also considering some other land that Unitil has under control or option as well. So we would have the expectation when we next meet with you, the wetlands application as well as an alteration of train permit would have been filed. So that we really have the whole package and the impacts associated with the project, not only for the wetlands, but also the buffer impacts as well.
That's great.
I think informal comments at the sidewalk certainly indicated that there was some shovel-ready projects that they had in mind. And it's always nice to keep mitigation in town when possible.
Yeah.
It's the Friends of Kingston Open Space or something along those lines.
Oh, yeah, focus.
Yeah.
Focus, yeah.
Focus, there we go. You gotta get my acronyms. Engineers, we like acronyms, so that's great. But we're working with them as well to see if there's something that we can figure out.
Groovy.
Anything else?
Taking more of your time, thank you.
Before you go, did we get the basics done, like, I know this is a public utility, not a retail, but, is it a permitted use in the rural residential zone? And, presumably, we allow solar panels, I think, in all zones.
And we established that as a board when we permitted the first utility development out there of the transmission power.
Right, yeah. So we have Peasley substation out there, we have Unitil's Kingston substation, and we also have Eversource's Kingston.
So everything will get, it's wetlands, the state will work on that, and then it's in the aquifer protection zone, so we don't do, is that the same requirement as the substation, or, although this has less impact?
I would say that this has less impact.
Right.
But when I do my review using the town's ordinances, I'm going to see how the aquifer zone applies to this development. It's still,
I see. So
it's still a requirement, so.
Yeah, okay, so
The only thing I'd say about that is, I know it came up on the sidewalk, but there was a question about leaching into the groundwater potentially from the materials.
the old materials that used to
There was
be used.
there was a comment made in regards to the modern day panels that would be used, whether or not there was any type of metals or otherwise that leach off them. And we said we'd get some follow-up information on that, but the expectation was a resounding no. But I may have the right person here to speak to it, so this is James Chance.
The answer is no to that question. And just, this is a very unique opportunity. So I run Revision Energy, we're over in Brentwood and a few other spots. I'm also been a Kingston resident for 10 years. This was a competitive bid that the utility ran. We were delighted to be selected as the awardee, and this provides like a pretty unique opportunity, I think, for Kingston, because not only have I been designing and installing solar arrays of this scale in New England since 2006, which makes us elderly in the solar industry, although that doesn't sound too far away. I'm also a dedicated Kingston resident, father, community member, so This is a good project. We're not gonna do anything to impact our groundwater, because that's my groundwater too. So I just wanna provide that context to the planning board, that I get to provide my general contractor hat, but also it comes from somebody who's deeply invested in this town and the long-term sustainability and financial benefits to our ratepayers and taxpayers. So that's where I'm coming from, and I'm happy to talk with the select board about that too at any point.
But no mess.
Any other thoughts or comments? Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you. Good presentation.
That was good.
Okay. And the second public hearing is with CJ and J Leasing. The property owner is Greg and Scott Dimitri of 83 Route 125. It's map R10 lot 9. And this is again a design review application to construct a refrigerator trailer storage facility, inclusive of an office building and repair shop and paved storage. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm Cindy Terrio with Wilcox and Barton, and here on the project. I have my thumb drive, I have a laptop, or I can go get my easel.
Okay, check with Adam here.
Perhaps we can do it that way.
He may be able to provide you.
You want a laptop?
Thumb drive, maybe. He's got a spare laptop, I think. It's already got the app.
Burst out of that room. It really was. It really was.
Enjoy.
He came out of that room like Kramer on Seinfeld.
Oh, boy.
It's the first time for us, the select board have used it.
Is it first time? Nice.
Yeah, for us, not the select board.
Actually, they're replacing all of us with artificial intelligence. It's been exhausting, hasn't it? Just erase the morality. Just erase the morality.
Please to all and something that just takes a second to get this.
Yes.
You should rename the projector.
Yes, I see that. I didn't want to go poking around in the platform.
Does it need, oh, that's not. I know how to do it.
And just as normal.
Discussion about
You might just have to use the touchpad. Sorry about that.
No worries, thank you so much.
Oh, look at that. You're up there.
Let's see. Alright, that'll work.
Do you want to introduce anything,
You ready, Lynn?
Lynn?
Yes. Pardon?
Do you want to introduce anything, because she is
Okay.
up and ready? I'm sorry, I forgot your name, I'm
And-
sorry.
So is Cindy Terrio?
Cindy Terry.
Oh, look, Cindy Terrio, PE, right up there on the,
There we go.
the big board.
Left-hand side.
Okay, Cindy, go for it.
All right, great. I am here representing CJ&J Leasing for a project on 83 New Hampshire Route 125. They are a company, their business is to lease refrigerated trailers. And so the proposed use for the property, I'm gonna do this in a different order. The existing site conditions for, are you all familiar with where this is? Okay, okay. So,
But we should tell the public, in
okay,
case they're not.
so, are you?
It's at the corner of Route 125 and West Shore Road.
Say that again?
It's at the corner of Route 125 and West Shore Road.
West Shore Road, that's right.
The northeast corner.
Okay, that's the easiest way
Okay.
to note it. These are the existing frontages for the property. Currently, there's a residence, a vacant residence on the property. It's approximately 12 acres. That covers most of it. So we'll go back. CJ&J, the reason they purchased the property is to move their existing facility from Haverhill, Massachusetts, because that property is being taken by eminent domain. And so they have to move their facility somewhere. They found this land and thought the 12 acres would be good for them to work their business. It is commercial zone 3. Again, the lot area is 11.76 acres. And the proposed use, they'll put a new building on there that will look similar to this. This is not their building, but it's basically a high efficiency solar panel ready building. There'll be 10 garage bays for services and approximately 3,000 square feet of office space that they'll use. There's 8 to 10 employees in the business. The hours of operation will be somewhere around 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Essentially is the majority of the site is proposed to be used as paved surface for their inventory of the trailers that are not currently leased. They anticipate that traffic will be, currently they have 10 to 25 trips a day based on their current use. We also have a traffic study. We've reached out to NHDOT, so we have a traffic study coming forth from that. We don't have that yet, but we do have that coming forth.
Because you're saying NHDOT is asking you to provide them a traffic study?
Correct. An assessment. They're calling it an assessment, basically, to get traffic counts from what their existing facility is so that they know what we're doing. Essentially, our proposal is to have access off of Route 125 instead of West Shore Road.
Okay.
So again, these are the existing conditions. This is the frontage of West Shore Park Road, looking to the east, essentially up the hill, and then looking to the west, heading down the hill. It's fairly residential, and there are barns on the side where the frontage is that is proposed to remain. And then this is the frontage off Route 125. The proposal now is to use the existing access off 125, but widen it to the south. I can flip back to these two when we get to it. So this is our current site plan. I wish I had a pointer, but I don't. As you see, the proposed Route 125 is the road on the left of this site plan, and then West Shore Park drive is on the bottom of the plan. The proposal is for an 18,000 square foot building, which again includes the 10 bays, 3,000 square feet of office space. They want to have an on-site fueling facility, which will also be designed and permitted through the state, and, well, through us, to the state, permitted through the state, designed by us. The green is the proposed area to be either graded or untouched. And then the gray shown there is the extent of the pavement. Snow storage is proposed for essentially the northeastern portion and the eastern portion of the site. And parking for the office space is proposed, there's 18 spaces proposed on the left there near Route 125.
Is that a walkway between the parking and the building? The
It
little
is.
hash marks?
It is, and that's for safety, and it's actually been modified a little, you'll see. You'll see. And so what has happened is we started, this is obviously an AOT, maybe not obvious to you, this is an AOT. We'll need to go through AOT for state approval. We have more than 100,000 square feet
You
of,
do.
yeah, of impact. As part of the AOT process, we had to reach out to NH, the National Heritage Bureau. We received comments from the Fish and Game, New Hampshire Fish and Game, that requested we do a vernal pool study. We did a vernal pool study. It came back after we submitted this. It did show that there was a vernal pool on the property.
Oh.
So,
Oh.
we backed off. So we changed our site plan
Yeah.
a little bit.
That was one of my comments, because this,
Yeah.
so everybody knows, this is, they're meeting their requirement for a preliminary meeting. So this is a design review, and nothing is binding, and it's just information. But one of the comments I had to you was that at the time that this was given to us, they had a wetland scientist that had established a 35-foot buffer, but that it was likely that would need to be reviewed when we got into the formal process. But it sounds like you've already got to deal with that issue.
We already got it, yeah. So, I mean, and the urgency that CJ&J has is that they basically have 6 months to vacate their property.
To get out.
And so, if we're going to use the site, we need to do as much as we can to expedite the process for them. So we wanted to get ahead of the AOT process, and it's just, part of it. So we jumped on it, because vernal pool studies need to be done in April, for the most part. And so they did it early May. And the Gove Environmental is the people that went out and did the study. It came back, and voila, vernal pool. So, as a result of that, we backed the pavement off and added retaining walls to catch the grade and steep slopes to keep out of the 100-foot buffer of the wetland that has the vernal pool in it. So that's the proposal that you see on the right. So we didn't fully design this, but we did want to show it to you. I know it wasn't sent out to the public, but
And that's fine, because this is, just a non-binding discussion, so.
yeah, okay. So that's the difference. So as, the revised 6.8 for the vernal pool, the total impervious area is 58.4%, and the open space is proposed at 41.6%. So
You're not in the aquifer protection zone.
that's correct. That's correct. Yeah. So moving forward, again, this is the site plan. The building stayed pretty much the same area, same place as the other one. We just modified the north part of the edge of pavement up there. Grading and drainage, this is on the other plan. Essentially, The same will happen on the south. We didn't change the grading and drainage at all. What you'll have is from West Shore Road, there'll be a cut in order to make a level area for the building. And then as you head north on the site, there's a proposed fill in order to make the paved area between 5 and 6% slope the entire way. Proposed stormwater is in the northeastern side. That's proposed to be underground cisterns, essentially, and then septic, actually it's on a different plan. Utilities, the well, it'll be both private and wastewater, private water and sewer, and the well is proposed for the upper left-hand corner of the lot, the northern corner of the lot. Septic will be under pavement. It may end up closer to the building, depending on how the soils end up. We are proposing a dumpster on site outside of the 10-bay building. However, so if you see where the dumpster is, there's gray behind the dumpster, the sort of slanted piece there that looks like a U, like a slanted U, that's a loading dock. And then the loading dock goes to a covered shed. Doesn't have walls, but it'll have a roof. And in that is where they'll want to put their fuel tanks, some storage, some outdoor storage, and a few other things. So the proposed fuel tanks will be secure with vents. That's not fully designed yet, so we need to explore the options
Above ground?
for that. Yes.
Yeah, now the fuel tanks for the trucks or for the trailers?
There are diesel fuel tanks for the trucks. Yeah. Yeah.
So do you service the trucks or just the trailers?
He has four cabs and then the trailers. So the maintenance facilities, the maintenance bays are for the trailers. But the fueling is just for whatever he needs for on-site use. So the proposal right now is for 3 2,000-gallon tanks, a white diesel, a red diesel, and a waste oil. And then the building will be fully designed by an architect and designer. DGI, Dutton and Garfield is the project manager, I guess, for lack of a better term. They're overseeing the project. The proposal is also for a recycled wastewater bay, washwater bay, for cleaning. So the last bay all the way to the right is proposed to be the washwater and to have a fully recycled system there, so it doesn't get into the ground or anywhere else it doesn't need to be. There is an existing electric service on the ground. It will be upgraded as needed. Anything else? Any cable or any other utilities will be adjusted as needed. And then again, this is the proposal. The stormwater boxes are still on there. They'll be adjusted to be underneath the pavement. And as I said, the proposal is to keep the pavement outside of the 100-foot buffer to the wetland where the vernal pool is. I am willing to entertain.
I did notice on the plan you showed for the well a 75-foot protective
It
radius,
is 75.
but the town requires 100-foot,
Okay,
so you'll need to just
so no
adjust
pavement?
that. No, you can have pavement in that.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
From a previous applicant on an abutting piece of property to this, to the north of this property, there was I want to say it was a deeded right-of-way that comes off of 125 that goes out behind this piece.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with that at all? And where that is compared to this whole layout? There's actually a right-of-way. I'm trying to think of the map we had, and it showed it
You're talking about the Boy Scout camp?
Yeah, but it's
Came
a
up?
piece of conservation property that's out there.
Yeah, so that'd be east of there, right?
Well, yeah, but the road came in to the left of this lot, it was right there. And I'm trying to think where that comes. It comes off of 125, and it shows it to the left of that lot. It goes out to a piece behind, which would be behind Samus's house, behind that Boy Scout camp. It's a big conservation piece.
Yep.
And there's actually a deeded right-of-way that goes to 125 right there. So I'm just kind of curious how that would run into, we actually just saw it on the map, that's what's bringing it to my attention. It's there. I just don't know where it falls to that property line to go out to that back piece.
Is it north of Mill Stream Cemetery, where it comes out? And,
It was, I'm telling you, it abutted this piece.
So it was between this piece and the blue house next door.
Correct, it was like up between there, and it showed a deeded right-of-way to get to that conservation easement piece out in the back. And I think it was the map that they showed us from remember they were separating the lots on West Shore property? I think they actually showed those.
May's meeting? Or
Yeah,
April's
they
meeting?
showed that easement, it's not an easement, it's a deeded right-of-way to get to that piece. And it goes in into the left somewhere, right to the north of that property.
Is it through the cemetery or is it through?
I wish I had that map in front of me.
I don't think it'll be through the cemetery, because it's got a stone wall behind it, and you can't get.
We could recess the meeting for a minute and see if we can locate those plans.
I don't think it's that big of a deal, we just made, I mean, this is only a preliminary, just to think about, there is a right of way on the north side of that property. And I'm just kinda curious how
So
that
if
goes.
there, I mean, you should know, somebody should have told you that.
Yeah, if it's on.
Well, it's not on our property though.
Yeah.
Correct.
You said it is on the
Oh,
property?
you're saying it is on the property.
Yeah, he's saying it is on the
I'm thinking
property.
it kinda goes across that back corner, that's why I'm saying.
So I would just,
Just to check for any easements on the
yeah,
property.
I would hope that you would get your
Yeah,
title
just
insurance person to make
Possible
sure that
any
it's
easements on
there.
that.
Somebody needs to.
They should have found that when they did the title,
They should.
That's what I'm
when they
saying.
purchased the property.
There's a conservation.
Too bad Rob's not here
conservation
tonight.
easement.
I wonder if that has something to do with the 20-foot offset.
I didn't see any mention of it.
You didn't? Okay, I was like, I didn't think I missed it either.
No,
but-
I didn't
okay.
see any mention of it.
And Peter, you said you saw it on a map.
One of the ones we just heard this, I think is when they were, remember when they were separating the house lots off the road?
Yeah.
And I think it showed that property that was being cut off from. So that property actually showed how it wrapped around this piece. And there was conservation out back that was separated from that, because we were talking about what they could develop, they couldn't develop over
Right,
the camp.
and that is conservation.
And there was a big piece of
That's their
conservation
property.
out there, and there was a right of way to get to that conservation. Because if not, it'd be blocked in.
Yeah, so I thought that came off from near where the entrance. to
One
the
came up
boys'
on the left-hand side of that property.
Okay,
There's
yeah,
another
I missed
piece
that
out
part
there.
of it, yeah.
So you've been constrained by the vernal pool. And
Adjusted.
the adjusted. It's all in perspective, you're right. But here's my perspective. The former northeast corner was horrible as far as it was the only place on site. We had a lot of units where there was no way to get to them through two aisles of parked vehicles. And I was hoping that that got better, but it looked like it actually gets worse, and that there's more now in the new proposal of units that you can't access unless you move units in front.
Yeah, and they're okay with that because they only move, a dozen a day, right? And so what they do is
And the
use-
refrigeration doesn't pose any kind of fire concerns or anything, so you're not gonna have a spontaneously combusting
Right.
vehicle out there. It's not like you're storing stuff in those vehicles that would explode.
Yeah,
Right?
and, right, correct. And to be clear, the trailers, they're not attached to the cabs. So
Right.
it's just the back storage piece with the wheels, and then the two things that fall. I'm sorry, I don't have technical terms for all of this.
And
You know, the two things that
They
fall.
don't run the refrigeration when they're in storage, or something.
No.
Something that whoever leases them would pick them up and then hook them up.
They
to the
get plugged
truck.
in when they're at the grocery store or wherever they're going. Yeah, yeah. So, I say plugged in, that's probably not the right term either. But so these are just the back pieces of the trucks, essentially, that are being stored. And so they don't necessarily need full access to all of them. What they'll do is in the back piece, I'm sorry, the thing went out, but in the back pieces where they don't have access, if they need to get to one there because it's special for whatever reason, they'll just move them on site and then push them back. But what they said was they'll just store the ones in the back that they don't use more frequently. The ones that need to be repaired will be stored up front, back near where the building is. And then they have shorter units and longer units.
And how does that, I mean, this is an operational question that you may just want to, you know, slap me upside the head, but when we get a heavy snow, then that entire area that can't, that aren't attached to anything, how do they get them out? How do they get to them?
Yeah, I mean, they'll have, they have an existing operation in Haverhill.
Where presumably the snow is
far,
basically the same.
Right, it's basically the same. And what they do is they just, in the winter season is actually their more busy season, and so there are less.
So they may have less
the
trailers on
property
site?
during the winter months than they do.
Because
now,
the 240 units or something was what I counted.
Correct, yeah.
Does anyone know how the town defines truck terminals?
Well, that was my big question.
Yeah.
That I wanted the board to talk about.
I think, my interpretation of a trucking terminal is a place where they're bringing, offloading goods that are either then being moved into another, not necessarily the storage of the trailers.
Right.
To me, a trucking terminal is like when you ship something freight, they load it up, they bring it, and they offload it there,
Yeah.
and it gets distributed into smaller.
Yeah,
vehicles.
it moves around.
It's
Also the warehouse.
usually, the trucking terminal I usually think of more as the goods getting either brought to and relocated within there.
Yeah.
Here's my question. I don't think it's what the ordinance intended, but these are leasable vehicles. And we have a standard about used vehicles, recreation vehicles, and trailers. Now, I'm sure they mean recreational trailers, but the ordinance says trailers, and it says if they're either for sale or leasable. And if that's the case, those facilities can't be within 1,000 feet of another place that either sells vehicles or leases them, which we happen to have Pat's truck, which does that very thing, and it's within 1,000.
And I was looking at that ordinance, and I'm like, was it designed to not have? And that's like, is it all or nothing? Is it like if you have a camper place, then you can't even have a
Car sales.
A car
a
sales.
car salesman within 1,000 feet,
That's
or
correct.
was it car sales couldn't be 1,000 feet
Of another car sale.
and that
Let's be brutally honest, it all came because of car sales.
yes,
Right.
I mean, that was the desire to be addressed by that ordinance. Now, we did happen to, I don't know why we threw in recreational vehicles.
Because there was so many along, there was 1, 2, 3, there were like 5 of
Campers
them
in, yeah.
on that side of the road, there was campers in. there
But
was
did anybody
rentals.
care about recreational
They
vehicle
did.
sales? They did?
They felt,
I never heard a complaint. All I heard complaints about were car dealerships.
all I know is every time we tried to bring something forward to the town that did it, it was automatically put into that category of something having to do with a vehicle. And as long as it had a vehicle, that's where it fell. So that a lot of people wanted similar pieces of property to this along 125, and they were turned away when they came before the planning board or to other boards because they were vehicle in nature, regardless of the type of vehicle.
Right.
And they felt that car sales, people didn't think it was a very pretty entrance to the community.
Well, it wasn't.
I'm not even saying I agree or disagree, but the thinking of it at that time was they weren't very pretty, and that the camper places weren't looking any better. And so
Really?
Yeah. So that's the thinking that
So that's the question, people should look at that section of the ordinance,
Yeah.
so it's the permitted uses, and I think it's
It's
maybe
K.
letter
It's
K.
It says vehicle trailer and recreational vehicle sales rentals, or leasing. So this is trailer
And
leasing.
service repair
And
facility.
service repair facility, provided that no lot used for this purpose be located any closer than 1,000 feet from in any direction from any other lot used for this purpose.
Now,
And the
So these
only
purpose-
trailer definition that I can find is a travel trailer, which is not terribly helpful to the current
And
discussion.
all I know is I came before the planning board many times with people that wanted to be, long before I was a member, with people that wanted to locate something on 125, and they were told no. Because of this, and I always thought the 1,000 feet, I felt that the 1,000-foot thing was discriminatory. So I've always been against that 1,000-foot regulation.
And I guess, like, my problem with the language in it,
Well, this language seems to say, if it's a like use, it can't be
Right.
1,000 feet.
well, so, I guess when I read it, it's, I'll just read it out loud, it's irrelevant. Vehicular, trailer, and recreational vehicle sales, rentals, or leasing and service repair facility, provided that no lot used for this purpose may be located any closer than 1,000 feet in any direction to any other lot used for this purpose. To me, the way they use the singular
This purpose,
makes me think, okay, recreational vehicle sales, so now you can't, so since it's used for this, you can't have another recreational vehicle sales.
I think you're right.
I think the language, if it wanted to say, it would have said any of these, it can't be within another 1,000 feet of any of these purposes.
And this is
So the way
very
I would read
different.
it is, it wouldn't necessarily be it wouldn't be a violation of.
Because Pat's is not the same sort of
Yeah,
operation
so a truck
as this
sales,
one.
to me, seems very different than a trailer leasing service.
Do you,
I think it's something we need to know by heading.
yeah, because I
Yeah.
guess I would
Because
just
let's
wonder when
face
people were
it,
drafting this. were
no
they
matter which way
thinking-
we go on this, there will be a portion of people who are not happy.
Right,
And
right.
Huddy's gonna be the one that has to determine whether or not it's legally defensible
Huddy
in
happens to be our attorney.
any direction.
I think if you, I read it the way you read it.
Yeah.
I read it that this would be prohibited if within 1,000 feet, another business was doing this exact same
Yeah,
thing.
because I get it, the town didn't wanna be the used car auto mile,
That's right.
and it was,
It was
but-
becoming that.
they wanted, but I think different businesses, the way I read this, I would say they just didn't want the same thing.
Yeah, sort of like the
On-
RV mile or the car mile, but you're talking about a service repair facility, basically a garage, and
And this isn't open to this isn't like a garage that's open to the
Right, I
public.
know,
Right, it's a
I know.
maintenance
Where
facility.
you come in
and
get
that's very different
inspections.
than an
This is-
RV sales.
Yeah.
But to Lynn's point, it's an aesthetic as well, right? Like people
Right.
are going
That's what they were
to
looking
see
for.
that there are
Well, the other
We'd like
thing
to
that we
pass
helped
down-
trailers,
But then
stores.
then the people constantly ask us, well, how come there's no commercial development coming in
No,
town?
it's-
I know.
How come all that, we have these commercial zones and nobody's going in?
How hard would it be to find out, so at least for the prohibited uses, it looks like that was amended in 2018. What the definition of truck terminals, I am agreeing with Chris that I think, how I'm envisioning it is
Right, the
consistent
application
with what
K
you
doesn't
described.
really
Like,
apply.
trucking
That
terminal,
seems like an
yeah.
easy thing to.
I view as the
figure out.
266 Route 125, where that is
Right.
numerous tractor trailers coming in,
Yeah.
offloading goods that are eventually either gonna be put on some other delivery platform or being brought in and out. That, to me, that is a trucking terminal.
And I think that's what they meant by that
Yeah.
when they did that, because I remember when the C3 was formed,
Yeah.
in 2003, talking about.
And I think it's because that's what
And I was-
SLS was engaged in. SLS was a trucking terminal. Trucks would
Correct.
go out there, drop off goods, and it would go on smaller
Correct.
delivery trucks that go out to other sites.
So I think that's what they were thinking of. But the other thing that I think might help with this a little bit is we also have the 110.8, which is outside sales and or storage. And it specifically says that any outside sales and or storage in this commercial district is subject to planning board approval. Outside storage in this district should be defined as the placement and location of equipment, supplies, parts, inventory, and materials that are not intended for or being made accessible to the public or customers for sale or use. If outside storage is allowed, all storage areas will be visually screened from access streets, arterials, and adjacent property. No storage shall be allowed between a frontage street and the building line. No storage will be allowed within the property setbacks or any designated green space. So I'm just wondering if a
That was
fence,
a better,
if a fence would work to keep their inventory out of view of the street. And might also
Well, it only
help
needs to be visually screened from access streets, right? So,
125 and
West
West
Shore
Shore
Road.
yeah. So I'm thinking that if they put a fence there so that a fence that's screening, it might help meet that requirement and also help make it more visually appealing, because what they're selling, they don't necessarily need lined up like used cars along the front of the street.
Right, they don't have the necessity of visibility for sales purposes.
And there's not enough of a vegetative buffer to take care of that?
Around back, I think there
In
is.
the back, I think so.
Sure.
On the north side, I think there is. But it does get
Not
dicier.
here.
So just trying to make it, how can we do this so that we can make it work? Did you want to say something? If you do, then you need to come forward and you need to introduce yourself and tell us where you live, so for the record, and they'd be very happy to talk with you. Because I'm assuming that you're part of this and you're not in a butter, or are you in a
No,
butter?
I think he's in
I am a
butter.
butter.
Then you have to wait a minute.
Oh, sorry.
She'll do
Oh,
public
okay, it's my first time with them.
No, I'm sorry. We will have a public comment period.
Oh, okay.
Where we go, I'm very much looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Okay, perfect. Joe, go back and wait.
Just sit there, you're the only other person in the room.
Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
We're a friendly lot. Yeah, turn off that, I turned it on earlier. All right, any other comment before we get into our department comments?
well, we had I noticed on the plans, you only have a 20-foot buffer around the residential property next to you, and our ordinance actually calls for a 50-foot buffer for residential use next to commercial use. So it would have to be a 50-foot buffer, just not for the cemetery, but just for that the 1800s house that's there.
The blue house
Blue house that's got fixed up. So
and the houses that are being built on West Shore Park Road.
the northwest, yeah, the one that's sort of cut out of your area. That's
So
And then-
and we did have a question about that,
yeah, that's
if this.
Because on one of the sheets, you do show a 50-foot buffer.
yeah, it's in 904.6. It's in our general standards section.
And so the buffer says, if I remember correctly, and I don't have my notes in front of me, but it's a vegetative buffer, is that correct?
Yes.
To be natural, and then it goes on to say 15 feet of landscape, or
well, it said,
buffer,
I can read it.
50 feet of landscape.
To provide privacy and noise reduction in residential areas abutting non-residential sites, the entire buffer area is intended to remain in a vegetative state. The distance to be required for buffer areas between abutting non-residential uses shall be determined by the planning board at the site plan review stages here. The required buffer zones shall not be less than 50 feet when separating a non-residential lot from a residential lot. The required buffer zone must be entirely located on the applicant's property. When separating residential and non-residential uses from one another, these buffer areas shall be planted with a screen of shrubbery and trees not less than 6 feet in height at the time of planting. The screen shall be at least 15 feet in width and should be maintained by the owner. And then it talks about the year-round and has 50% of plantings shall be evergreens. And at the discretion of the planning board, this is where you might have some, the standards described above for landscape buffer areas may be waived in favor of alternate forms of screening, including but not limited to stockade fencing. And then there's, that's the requirement. It's basically you have to have a 50-50 mix of evergreen and deciduous, or at least 50% evergreen, so that you get year-round screening, and 50 foot is the minimum buffer.
So it's on both sides, it is on this side as well, and on this side.
Because you actually show the 50-foot setback
Here we have it,
going all the way around here.
right, so that's accurate,
Right.
But
But it
also-
stops short here, where there should be, where it should be 50 feet. But down here, the ones across the street, I think are commercial. West Shore Park Road.
Those two lots are.
Yeah, that's commercial, across from West Shore Park Road, that's commercial, so that's early, not the early, but the
The two
Olmsted
lots.
Snow property that got split into a commercial lot.
Yep.
So that's not an issue
So
there.
that isn't an issue, it really is.
The only place is that one house, the old house.
This one right here.
Right.
Is that it?
What a coincidence. What a coincidence.
So we're ready for
Oh, wait,
department
Joshua,
That's
you
it. Yes,
just
sir.
introduced yourself.
comments? Okay, so we're ready for department comments. Why don't we start with you, Glenn, as
Okay.
our town planner?
All right, so my comments, this is a design review for a proposed new commercial enterprise on New Hampshire Route 125. The discussion is non-binding on either the applicant or the town. The proposal is to construct a refrigerated trailer facility with an 18,000 square foot facility for maintenance and office space. Following are my comments. The plan set indicates an 18,000 square foot structure. What are the proposed uses for this building? I think you went over that with us. But I wanted to say the planning board needs to make the decision if the leasing of these refrigerated trailers means that if there is a car dealership closer than 1,000 feet from this proposal, it must be denied. So that's the whole issue that we've talked about that I believe we're going to talk to Huddy
I
about.
think we need to talk to town council
All right,
about
so
that.
then the plan shows a 75-foot protective well radius. The town requires a 100-foot for the well. The wetland buffer is established at 35 feet, although that is fine for the design review. It is likely that an application for site plan, the board will send out the report that determined the buffer width for third-party review. We already know that that buffer has been increased to 100 feet, which is the maximum buffer we have. Is there any potential for emergency response necessary for the units proposed to be stored on the northeast corner of the site? These 3 rows in the corner have no access behind the first row. This is not the case where anywhere else on the site. If there is a chance to reduce the number of vehicles to allow for movement between rows, that would be beneficial. I think that you addressed that already. The driveway permit will need to be approved by both the town and the New Hampshire Department of Transportation. That's a little odd probably for most of the towns that you deal with. Even though it is on a state road, we require that you still talk with our highway agent. How is the site expected to be screened? Stockade fencing, landscape buffers is a question. I say that there's a debris yard indicated in the very front of the facility, and this seems like a bad visual decision for a business, but that's something that you can do. Are you saying that there's a debris yard there right now?
Yeah,
Because and you intend to keep it?
no, I
Because it's a horrible location for a debris yard. It shows in front of the parking lot.
Tell us how you're doing your plan.
It says,
oh, debris pile.
yeah,
Melting that up.
which I think that is a horrible entry point. You can be as ugly as you want, but that's really ugly.
It's all-
That was a note from the surveyor. Existing condition.
Perfect. How many employees will be on the site daily? I think you indicated that between 8 and 10. What are the proposed days and hours of operation? What is the anticipated noise level for the site? Because I think, worst case scenario, 1,000 running, well, in this case, I came up with 240 something. Running refrigerated trailers seem to me like they make a lot of noise, but of course, you don't run them all at the same time. And likely not on site hardly ever, but, because it
Well,
wouldn't,
it'll be, whatever they have to do with the repair shop.
Right,
It'll be
right.
contained within the building, so.
perfect. How many daily trips are generated by the site, and you've already anticipated that you're gonna be doing stuff? And, wow, I say no capital, which is just a typo. Exterior lighting is displayed on the plan, so we
There will
would
be
need
some
that to
Yeah.
show. And we do have a lighting ordinance that does
Yes.
have to be dark sky compliant, and so
Yes.
none of this is news to you.
No, and there also will be, I forgot to mention, they'd like to have a sign as well, and I know
Yeah.
there's also a sign ordinance, so. we'll
There is, I
provide
thought that
that.
I had indicated that, but you know what, I didn't say, I did look for one, and there isn't one indicated, but,
Right.
so you're all over that.
We will add it to the plans.
Okay. So, comments from the departments. Fire department, comply with NFPA for fuel dispensing facilities and repair garages. Knox box, access for any gate or buildings. NFPA 72 fire alarm system installed. Town of Kingston Fire Protection Regulations, note 1008.2 and 1008.3. We can give you copies of all this.
Thank you.
Cistern noted on drawing to comply with fire protection regulations, 1008.3. From the police, I would like a traffic study done. How is this going to impact Route 125? I'm concerned about the noise level. It's the other people that have to enforce the noise level. From the Public Works Department, the biggest issues at first glance. No details are provided for the fueling facility to include design, construction, spill plan, etc. A subsurface infiltration gallery is noted, but no exception. Is this the chamber system noted, or will there be one in each catch basin? Please clarify. What were the planning considerations for rainfall? There is nothing to retain the runoff on site shown on the plan, such as curbing on the perimeter. The snow storage area indicated places it on the edge of the parking lot with a 14 foot to 16 foot of elevation drop and no curbing. Given that fueling operations are proposed, this has the potential to create a hazardous runoff situation. An annual inspection maintenance schedule for the storm system is needed. Currently leaves too much undefined. Has any traffic study been completed? This seems like the potential for a large volume of traffic entering and exiting the highway, which has the potential impact adjacent town roads. A lighting plan is referenced but not provided. That takes care of that. And I believe that is the end of department head comments.
How about the one from Dana Akers?
Oh, that's a letter from the public, so we'll wait for public comment.
Public comment, get ready, Jack. You're almost on.
Do we have any other questions or comments anybody wants to make before we start with public comment? Seeing none, we're opening public comment at 6 p.m. Yes, sir. It is now your turn. Would you please introduce yourself and tell us where you live?
Of course. My name is Josh Weber. I live at 85-125, the blue house there. So we have a couple of questions. So we bought the house almost 2 years ago now, and we've done a lot of work. I'm sure you guys have seen it.
It's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Great.
So we love it, and some of the concerns we have with the trucks coming in and out, one of the things would be coming down that road 125, as they're slowing down to pull in, is that going to cause a big backup of traffic and increase the risk of accidents, as the speed limit there I think is 45 on that road. And then also the big thing that we're concerned about is sort of the barrier between going out into our yard and letting my two boys run around and just seeing all of these tractor trailers. That was really one of the big deciding factors of us wanting to buy the house, was having this, beautiful wooded area behind us that we could go out to, and have some peace and quiet. My son has autism and it gets overstimulated all the time. So my wife and I were pretty concerned as to how this is going to impact him with the different noises from the trucks, as well as they're a repair facility doing all the repairs that they're going to do and stuff like that. So I guess those are some of the concerns that we have, as well as just like you brought up with the barrier between where our property line is as to where that parking lot starts for the rest of the refrigeration trailer. So essentially we'll walk out into the backyard now and just see a ton of pavement and all of these trailers, which kind of takes away completely of what we had intentionally, or intended at when we bought the house. So.
Thank you. We also have a letter from Dana Akers. It was addressed not only to the planning board, but also to the Country Pond Lake Association and the New Hampshire Lakes Organization.
Is Dana, she's in a butter? Or he's in a butter? I don't know. I don't know what sex that person is.
I don't think it says. I don't think it says. We can check. Hi Greg, Andrea, and the Kingston Planning Board. Albeit the attached proposed use appears clearly not permitted under zone 110.3K, which happens to be your 1,000-foot regulation, except excerpt attached. Pat's truck is less than 400 feet from this intersection. Nor 110.8 development of this site in some manner appears forthcoming and worthy of your attention. The lot is 12 acres and slopes down literally to the Mill River, the largest inflow to Country Pond. Inexplicably, it's not in the aquifer protection zone, and thus 75% lot coverage is allowed. That's 9 acres or 392,040 square foot of impervious area allowed. To put that in perspective, if you assumed 2,000 square foot average roof and pavement area of the 150 houses on Country Pond, the impervious area of this lot could far exceed the total existing impervious area of all the shorefront lots combined. Andrea, I enjoyed your presentation regarding protecting New Hampshire lakes, and Greg, I was impressed with your grant and fundraising efforts for Country Pond. If you're both looking for a big bang for the dollars, you might consider utilizing grant funds to incentivize and help the developer of this lot. Pervious pavement or other costly methods that are not required of the developer could be implemented to reduce the impervious impact. That was his comment. He's not in the letter. Doesn't say he's with Kingston or anything. He is with Kingston? Okay. Member of the public from Kingston. And that, I believe, ends our public comment period, unless you'd like to add anything, Josh?
I think that's it.
Okay. So we will now close public comment at 8:02 p.m. Okay. We talked a lot about this. Any further comments? Anything else we'd like to give Cindy for feedback?
Just for the public comment, folks, while we can empathize with certain desires, there's only certain things we have purview over, and it falls down to what properties are zoned for, and then we follow the regulations on, whether, if it's able to continue forward. There may be a decision from legal that says, hey, we have to deny this, and they could apply for a zoning board of adjustment, or it could be determined that no, this can go forward, and then we have to follow the regulations for what the stormwater requirements. There's certain things that the board has some latitude in, but there are certain things we just don't. And while I empathize with the fact when you buy a piece of property and it's surrounded by woodlands and a previous Boy Scout camp, and you're envisioning that's what you want it to stay, sometimes things are out of our control. We can't tell people what they can and can't do on their property as long as it conforms to what the town has voted on and allowed. So we understand that a lot of times there's frustrations, and it's not, sometimes we have to leave our personal opinions at the door. We have to do with what's legally allowed and not necessarily what our personal interests are. So I just want to, we feel for the situation, but we have a set of standards we have to follow.
Absolutely.
And on that note, I do also know that Scott and Greg want to be good neighbors, so we'll work with you.
Yeah, absolutely, and we want to stir the pot or cause any problems, but that was the biggest concern, is the visual stuff, and then, some of the other stuff we brought up. Did we ever get any confirmation on that access road that I think you were talking, someone was talking about?
No, Peter. No, I was looking, I couldn't find it. I think it's with the.
So that says it's between my house and.
Somewhere in there, I thought it's got to do with the conservation easement of that Boy Scout camp. There's a piece in that back left-hand corner, if you look at the map, and I'm trying to.
So it doesn't come in through?
No, I don't, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's gotta show that.
We'll look into that a
We'll
little
look
bit
into
more.
it, yeah, we'll find it.
The good
And
news,
I think it would behoove you to
Oh, yeah, we want to know.
have your surveyor look into that issue.
Yeah.
the good news for you is that they found a vernal pool, which means you're going to have a much larger buffer between this and the property.
And you get to teach your kids about it.
So this
About salamanders.
it's 50 feet between my property and where the people live.
So I think, really probably the biggest thing that the applicant needs need to know from this is we need to have legal weigh in on that, because that's gonna be the biggest thing, whether or not we have to say, hey, we would have no choice but to deny, and you'd have to seek recourse to the zoning board of adjustment, or whether legal reads however legal determines the definition in the best interest of the town.
And we may have them look at the outside sales and storage as well, but my recommendation personally as a member, not as chair, would be that we definitely would look at some sort of fencing.
Sure.
That would help screen the inventory of trailers.
Right.
From the public.
And they're open to that as well. I'm sure, like we've talked about it. Saw it coming, right? It's one of those things.
Is this is not an expansion of the existing operation in Haverhill?
No,
or,
it's
so
what they
it's
have, yeah.
Carbon copy of what they're doing there.
Essentially, yeah, it's pretty close. There's more acres here, but their
Right.
land in Haverhill is flat, and this is not. So we have to, essentially, land.
Yeah, it's really not flat where it's not flat.
No, it's not. It's really not. Yeah. So, when do you think we'll have an answer from your attorney about those two issues?
Here's the rub. I usually come to the board and ask you if I can talk with counsel, but that's not the procedure anymore. The procedure is we ask the selectmen, the board of selectmen, if we can talk to counsel. So that's not gonna happen before Monday, because that's their next meeting.
Correct.
And I know this because I have, at the end of this meeting, I needed to ask you people to give me permission to ask the board of selectmen if I could talk to counsel about something different. So it would, in this instance, now I have two things I'd like to talk with her about.
So nothing's gonna happen
This week.
this week.
Right before.
So we'll
Because,
get
yeah,
permission to
the board of
select,
selectmen's on the summer schedule, so we're only meeting every other week.
But
And
you're
if-
meeting
even
Monday
if we met,
morning.
it would have been yesterday.
but you're meeting Monday morning.
Monday, yes.
So we can probably, there's a department head meeting Monday morning, we can ask the permission at that point, I'm assuming?
Yep.
And then perhaps I would be able to call council Monday afternoon when I'm in.
Okay.
And if that's the case, then obviously it may take a couple of days for her to research it, but we'll ask her to be very timely.
And then, let's just assume all's great,
Mhm.
we're good to go. What is the procedure from here? Do we modify the plans based on the comments that we've received and resubmit to board for full site plan
Right,
approval?
for full site,
Is
for
that
site
the
plan
procedure,
approval,
correct?
that's correct.
Okay, and then
I'm
there
finding
are
fine.
presumably deadlines for that.
So the deadline for that is that we meet.
And the July deadline has already passed.
Okay, that was my
So,
question.
so
We'll be on the
you'd be
August
looking for the
meeting.
August meeting, and
so-
that deadline is the middle of July. Robin
And I can
or I
look that up, that's
can,
fine.
yeah, Robin,
Yeah.
I actually think it is posted on.
Yeah,
Here.
yeah, it is.
Here we go. I got it wrong.
Yeah,
Oh, you got it.
Site plan requirements, yes. Yeah.
The public hearing is the 15th, and everything needs to be in by July 13th.
July 13th, okay, great. And it just.
And then everybody gets re-noticed, because it's a public hearing.
Right. Okay. That's great. And then the question arose, should we go, do we have to go in front of the Conservation Commission, given that we're proposing to stay out of the 100-foot buffer? Are we still to approach, to be in front of them?
If you're meeting the full, vernal pool 100-foot buffer, I don't think you have to, but I always encourage you to.
Yeah, there's no reason for us to.
Because
not
they
to.
might have
Okay.
other issues, and if they have other issues that we only hear about, or you only hear about at our first meeting, then you won't have had a chance to think about them.
Right. Okay. No, that's great. So we'll reach out to them as well.
That would be great.
Okay.
Anything else? Thank you for coming,
Thank you very much.
Nice
Appreciate
to
your
meet you.
time. Nice to meet you as well.
and thank you, Josh, for coming.
Absolutely, thank you. Thank you guys, thank you.
Okay. And the hearing is over at 9:09. Okay. Board business. Did we vote on minutes? Yeah, we did. Correspondence.
No, you were talking about.
I was talking about,
You were talking
okay.
about changes, but you never voted.
So we made a couple of typo changes to the minutes, other than that, Does that, do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
Yeah, I'll move to accept the minutes, with the corrections you mentioned, and also line 389, change the word track to track, T-R-A-C-K. It says the solar panels will turn to attract the sun, and it means, I think he meant track the sun. We don't need the sun getting any closer to us.
Okay. I saw that too, but I just thought it was awkward language. Okay, any other? So, all, do you have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the minutes are accepted as corrected. We have an invoice from the Rockingham Planning Commission for our 2023 dues. I believe the dues are based on the population with $1 for every person, is that true? And so our dues would be $6,353. So we need to take a vote as to whether or not to pay that bill and remain a member of the Rockingham Planning Commission.
Well, I would move that we continue our longtime membership of the Rockingham Planning Commission. We receive services from it.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And we have more to come before us, I understand, Mr. Greenwood.
You what?
We have more coming in front of us. You wanted permission to speak to council on
Yes.
another matter?
Yes.
Do we need to, we all need to be in public?
Nope. So there's been a lot of discussion between attorneys on the housing support project at 86 Main Street.
Yep.
And they're trying to come to some sort of agreement that will make the abutters happy. And they're, at this point, they're opting to default from, well, to change from their proposed plan, which is 4 apartments, to going back to it being a duplex. The duplex would have 3 bedrooms in each side, which I think it has. Here's the rub. In order to have a duplex, if you're going to rent the 3 rooms in the duplex, we're getting awfully close to it being a boarding house, not a duplex. And so I really want to talk to Huddy, since it has been her council that has said that the HD1 district, because of the vagueness of its language, approves of residences. What does this mean? Because the abutters believe that because if they were going to be a duplex and then they like the idea of it being a duplex because that's what it is, but the renting of each of the rooms to different people who aren't family members makes them believe they have to go to the ZBA. And after a lot of time looking at our ordinances and talking with the chairman of the ZBA, whose name will go unspoken, it's just a quagmire, and I want Huddy to give some counsel.
And I think the biggest thing they need to be cautious of is the attorney for the abutters and the attorney for the project could come up with an agreement that they both love, and it doesn't necessarily mean the town has to approve it.
Exactly.
Or it doesn't meet the town's requirements.
Exactly, and I don't want to get in that place.
Yeah.
So I did tell him that because, when I say him, I spoke with the Council for Housing Support today. And I told him that this has to happen, and it means they aren't gonna meet the deadline for the ZBA for the July meeting. He wasn't crazy about it, but he understands that. He understands that if we're gonna do this, we need to do it right, or it's just gonna go on forever.
Yeah.
So I'd really like the opportunity to be able to ask the select people if I can talk to Huddy when I'm in on Monday.
Yeah, and I think the important factor there was that the ZBA, its normal practice is to get a letter of denial, and it cites the ordinance that they're receiving,
Right, which
requesting
is
relief
being
from,
met.
and that was the whole issue. It was about a definition and not an ordinance, and so I just felt we needed more guidance.
We just do.
One of the things that came up at the planning and zoning conference this year was that the lawyers that were presenting said that you should make a determination, in this case the ZBA, if a variance or whatever is actually required. So this is the first thing that you should do. And based on the information I hadn't thought about the renting out individual. I was just thinking in terms of a duplex with 3 bedrooms, it would be rented out as a unit.
Right, but this is all.
But now you're talking about renting, subletting individual rooms in there, and it's like, oh, yeah, that's.
It's different.
And yet,
That's different. It's still residential in use though.
and there are a lot of people in town, in that zone and other zones, that rent rooms in their homes.
Right.
Shared housing.
So I just, it has to be bounced off her, as long as you allow me to ask the Board of Selectmen to do that.
Well, I certainly don't think that the planning board ever abuses use of counsel.
We try not to.
We only ask the questions that are going to keep us from getting the town into litigation.
No, and the select board recognizes that this has been a complicated project from the start, and that's why there's been a lot of communication with council regarding this project, because this is another one of those ones where it seems like no matter what the decision goes, there could be some, you know.
Someone's gonna be aggrieved, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Someone's gonna feel aggrieved.
Yes. So, yeah, are you gonna speak to it? Do you want me to speak to it?
Well, Susan was gonna speak to it. I was gonna write her a text on Thursday with the response that I got from the planning board tonight.
Yeah.
To let her know what our requests were, and she was gonna bring those to you guys.
And after seeing the memo we got from Susan today, I was planning to be at that meeting.
Oh, good, because I
Yeah,
can't.
that's right.
That would be good.
So I was planning to attend.
I'll be there.
Okay.
That's exciting.
So I
So in
think-
this case, it would be 2. It would be the one we just talked about, and it would be the housing support agency.
Yeah, so just make sure Susan has both of those requests.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And feel free to speak to them any way that you'd like as a Board of Selectmen member.
Not known for my reserved demeanor.
And I did just want to say, apparently the Kingston golf course got sold.
Oh, it did.
Oh, did it?
And I'm gonna be meeting with a person on Thursday about development potential.
A lot of wetlands back there.
Kingston, do.
Yeah,
That's the Kingston Fairways, I mean?
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Kingston.
No, there are a lot
Fairways.
of wetlands there. Okay.
They from around here?
Huh?
The buyer?
I don't know who they are.
Do you know what they're thinking?
I meet them on Thursday. They didn't want to say anything over the phone, other than set up a meeting.
That it?
I haven't seen the transaction conclude. It wasn't in the registry review yet.
Yeah, I think that's what I heard. I heard it was expired and taken off the market.
It did. It was
Yeah.
taken off the market, and the judge was in charge, and they've appointed somebody to handle the affairs, according to what I understand, but I've been trying to get verification of
What a
that.
shame they let that poor little Cape go, huh?
But
No, that's horrible.
we shouldn't be talking about that at this point.
Oh, no.
We're still in public. Any other business to come before the board?
No, I'll just make a comment that online aquifer protection zone maps with the overlay of the properties is great. You can look right at it and say that this property that we talked about
does
tonight
help.
was completely surrounded by, but doesn't include any of it, and it's so much.
It really, I use it all the time.
Yeah.
Almost every day I'm in the office, I use it.
That's great.
It
Really
was well worth the money.
So we spent a few thousand, but
Save
yeah,
it.
everyone's using it. The
Save-
building
save.
inspector used it, the new guy that's temp, we've already talked about it, so it really was a good move. It was a good move.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I'll end this on a plus note.
During correspondence?
we did.
Oh, that's it?
That was just the bill,
Perfect.
so we're all set.
Great.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. We are now adjourned at 8:00.